All right, so our last type of bond is not really even really considered a bond at all. It's more considered a weak attraction. And there's a certain element that it's always going to be present when we have this, and we actually name the bond of that type of an element. And that element is hydrogen, so we call this a hydrogen bond. So what is a hydrogen bond? Well, whenever you have water molecules, because that's going to be our example, you know that water is hydrogen, two hydrogens and one oxygen, right? H2O. So here's a water molecule, there's another one, here's a third one, and so forth. Well, they kind of look like Mickey Mouse like ears here, right? So there's a reason why we draw them that way. It has to do with bonding angles. The hydrogens are not spaced out evenly on either side, they're actually pushed to one side. And that's some stuff that's really going to make a big difference when it comes to water and how water reacts, and water reacts and how water acts as a solid, liquid, and gas. But one of the things you may notice is that over here, there's two hydrogens. Now what's happening is the electron around the hydrogen is spending most of its time by the oxygen. The same over here, it's spinning, instead of being over here just as much as it is here around the hydrogen, the electron is spending most of its time close to the oxygen. So what does that do to the hydrogens? It makes them slightly positive. Makes them just slightly positive. The oxygen, though, has two extra electrons spending more time with it, so what does that do to it? It makes it slightly negative. So the oxygen, this side of the oxygen has a slightly negative charge. The two hydrogens have a slightly positive charge. If we were to actually just kind of focus those two together, we could say that this end is the positive end. Okay? So what do we have now? Well, we have a molecule that has a slightly positive side and a slightly negative side. So imagine if this were just one big circle, there would be a plus pole at one and a negative pole at other. Our planet is like this, right? We have a north pole and a south pole, a magnetic north and a magnetic south. We are in a polar planet. That's just how we work. It's like a magnet. It's got a north end and a south end, or a positive and a negative. Well, so does this water molecule. So do all water molecules. They have a plus end and a minus end. And so we call these type of molecules, or any molecule that has opposite polar sides to one molecule, we call these polar molecules. And that's going to be a big thing that we talk about when we talk about types of bonds, especially with water and how it reacts. Something is polar, it's like little magnets. It will dissolve easily in water, which is like a little magnet. But things that are non-polar, things like lipids and waxes and oils and greases, those are non-polar. They're not like little magnets, and so they don't dissolve easily in water. Water has a very hard time and really cannot break them apart. So what does that mean for the water molecule? It means that it's got a positive and a negative end. Well, so does this other water molecule, right? It's slightly negative here by the oxygen and slightly positive here on the hydrogen. So what does that mean? It means that a weak bond between the slightly positive hydrogen on one molecule is attracted to the slightly negative of another separate molecule. So right in between here, we'll get these little hydrogen bonds. And so just for a moment, these two are slightly attracted to each other. Pardon that. And so forth and so on. And this is one reason that it starts to give water some special properties, because it's like little magnets. We'll talk more about water in our next lecture. But just know that this is a very, very weak bond. You've probably taken your hand and pushed it into water before, right? The water didn't resist. It's water. You stick your hand in it. When you do that, you're breaking all these bonds. Matter of fact, water is a liquid. It's constantly flowing around. These bonds are constantly forming and breaking, just like high school relationships, right? Just form and break and form and break and form and break very quickly in a sample of water. Collectively, they're quite strong. If you ever done a belly flop into water, you're pushing against hydrogen bonds, which are very weak, but collectively, there's so many of them underneath you when you do the belly flop that your body can't push through them as well, and it ends up hurting, right? Those of you that have done belly flops, hopefully you all have. They're really fun. Everybody should experience that at least once. But between the the covalent bonds, the ionic bonds, and the hydrogen bonds, we really cover all of the bond types that we'll need in most of our biology classes. Remember, hydrogen bonds are very weak. They're easily broken. There are things in our body that have to open up, unwind, and unzip in order for us to use. One of those would be like DNA. That double strand, the two sides are held together by, you guessed it, hydrogen bonds. So that way the proteins, the DNA helicase that goes through and unzips it, reason why it can split the DNA molecules because it's put together with hydrogen bonds. It's very easily broken. If it were put together by hydrogen bonds, ionic bonds or covalent bonds, it would take a lot more effort and energy and biochemical machinery in our cell to unzip our DNA just to be able to read it and duplicate it. So reproduction from one cell to two, or even just opening it up to do DNA transcription or translation would take a lot more effort from us. So thank goodness we have these hydrogen bonds to help us still keep things together, but easily be able to be open. Okay. Well, I hope this, guys. This pretty much is it for the chemistry. I told you there wasn't much to it. I hope this helps, and I hope to see you next time. Y'all have a good night.